What's up, everybody? Back with another video. Still here in this series called The Gospels. Here in Luke chapter 23. And here in Luke 23, we're going to see the crucifixion of Jesus. We're going to see what he went through for us. Because of us. Because of everything that we've done wrong in our life. He suffered for us. So that through him and his suffering, he took upon our punishment. Through his suffering and resurrection, we are resurrected to life in him and are given his perfect life that we can't live. The perfect life that he lived is imputed to us. Our sin was imputed to him. That punishment. So, let's go ahead and get into the scripture. Then the whole body of them got up and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation, and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." So Pilate asked him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him and said, "It is as you say." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and to the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they kept insisting, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching all over Judea, starting from Galilee, even as far as this place." When Pilate heard it, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was in Jerusalem at that time for the Passover. And we see that Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, didn't want to put him to death. And it's interesting because, there's extra biblical writings, Old Testament ones, New Testament ones. And I can't say whether this is true or not, but there's a writing, I can't remember exactly what it's called right now. There's a writing talking about how Jesus had healed Pilate, I believe, and raised his son from the dead or something. John tells us in the end of the book of John, the Gospel of John, that if all the things that Jesus had done had been written down, there wouldn't be enough books in all the world to write down everything that he did. And there's this story about Pilate's son, if I remember right, about Pilate's son dying and Jesus resurrecting him. And Pilate actually believing in Jesus as the Messiah. Now, whether that's true or not, I can't say. But let me go ahead and continue with the scripture. I just wanted to bring that up. It's very interesting. Now Herod was very glad when he saw Jesus, for he had been wanting to see him for a long time, because he had been hearing about him, and was hoping to see some sign performed by him. And he questioned him at some length, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and the scribes were standing there, accusing him vehemently. And Herod, with his soldiers, after treating him with contempt and mocking him, sent him back to Pilate. Now Herod and Pilate became friends with one another that very day, for they had been enemies with each other. So he had already been arrested, he had been betrayed, arrested wrongfully, questioned. They mocked him, they spit on him. Pilate summoned the chief priests and the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought this man to me as one who incites the people to rebellion. And behold, having examined him before you, I have found no guilt in this man regarding the charges which you make against him. No, nor is Herod, for he has sent him back to us. And behold, nothing deserving death has been done by him. Therefore I will punish him and release him." Because he didn't want to have him killed. Now he was obliged to release to them at the feast one prisoner. That was a custom they had. I guess at Passover, to release one Jewish prisoner. But they cried out all together, saying, "Away with this man, and release for us Barabbas." And this is in parentheses, potentially not in the original translation. even though most of us know it. It says, he was one who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection made in the city and for murder. And so matter of fact, one account says it was murder. One says that he was a robber, Barabbas. And I believe there's no contradiction, and he was both. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again. But they kept calling out, saying, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And he said to them a third time, "Why? What evil has this man done? I found in him no guilt demanding death. Therefore I will punish him and release him." But they were insistent with loud voices, asking that he be crucified. And their voices began to prevail. And Pilate pronounced sentence that their demand be granted. And he released the man that they were asking for, who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, Barabbas. But he delivered Jesus to their will. When they had led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, coming in from the country, and placed upon him the cross to carry behind Jesus, because Jesus carried his own cross, but he didn't have enough strength. What's not included here is him being beaten 40 times. 40 stripes. I believe 40. I don't know why I'm not remembering this right now. That normally didn't go past 39. But I believe he had 40. And by his stripes we are healed. And there's a song out now about, I don't remember the name of the song. About Jesus being Jacob's ladder. Jacob had the dream. He said, "I saw a ladder ascending," and it's something God revealed to me a while back. He said he saw a ladder reaching from heaven to earth with angels ascending and descending on the ladder. And Jesus said, "You will see angels descending and ascending on the Son of Man." Jesus is that ladder to heaven. And the song talks about how, it's a worship song, it talks about how his stripes, the stripes on his back, are that ladder, that ladder to heaven. But after being beaten horribly, a lot of people died from that. Because, it wasn't just like a regular whip. It had different strands with like pieces of glass and rocks and different stuff that would just rip into somebody's flesh and tear it out. He had muscles torn open and everything. His whole back was torn open. And then he carried the cross, but didn't have enough strength to make it all the way up a hill. Didn't have enough strength to make it all the way, so we see Simon of Cyrene. They seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, coming in from the country, and placed on him the cross to carry behind Jesus. And following him was a large crowd of people, and of women who were mourning and lamenting him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, stop weeping for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us,'" which is actually a direct reference to what we read in the book of Revelation at the 6th seal. And we also see in another scripture, Jesus said, Matthew 24, he said, how difficult will it be for nursing mothers and those who are pregnant and nursing mothers during the time when he returns. For if they do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry? The tree being Israel. 2 others also who were criminals were being led away to be put to death with him. When they came to the place called the Skull, There they crucified him, and the criminals, one on the right and the other one on the left. Now this place is still there in Israel, still there in Jerusalem. It's right outside the city, I believe. The place called the Skull, it's a rock that looks like a skull. And I wish I could pull up a picture of it. I only have this phone on me. Lord willing, I'll be able to get another one soon and be able to do a little bit more in-depth studies like I used to, and actually show stuff, show pictures, and read other scriptures and stuff. But you can look it up, Golgotha. When they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. But Jesus was saying, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Imagine that. In the worst pain of your life, horrible pain, suffering, hanging on a cross, nails through your feet, nails through your arms. You can hardly breathe at all. It had to be very difficult to say anything. And he was able to, the people that did that to him, hanging on the cross, he was able to forgive them and say out loud, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. He had to, he had to push up on the nail in his feet and lift up on the nails in his wrists and his hands in order to take a breath, in order to say, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. That's love. That's mercy. That's incredible. He said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And they cast lots, dividing up his garments among themselves. And let me go ahead and jump back to Psalm 22, which is about the crucifixion, at least partially. One second. I'm going to just read through it real quick. See, this is, my God, why have you forsaken me? He said that as well. Far from my deliverance are the words of my groaning. Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I have no rest. Yet you are holy. O you who are enthroned upon the praises of Israel, and you our fathers trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were delivered. And you they trusted and were not disappointed. But I am a worm and not a man, a reproach of men and despised by the people. Prophecy about Jesus here, and leading up to and his crucifixion. A reproach of men and despised by the people. All who see me sneer at me. They separate with the lip. They wag the heads. They go. They separate with the lip. They wag the head. They shake the head, saying, Commit yourself to the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, because he delights in him. That was said to Jesus. Yet you are the one who brought me forth from the womb, and you made me trust one upon my mother's breast. Upon you I was cast from birth. You have been my God from my mother's womb. Be not far from me, for trouble is near. For there is none to help. Many bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. They open wide their mouth at me, as a ravening and a roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. His bones are out of joint and everything. My heart is like wax, it's melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaves to my jaws. And you lay me in the dust of death, for dogs have surrounded me. A band of evildoers has encompassed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. His bone, he didn't have a broken bone. He had dislocated joints, but didn't have a broken bone. And it was prophesied that his bones would not be broken. Right here. I can count all my bones. They stare at me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. I was missing this. I'm going back to the scripture, but I was missing this. I got these pennies at the Alamo. I was in San Antonio about a month ago, and for a conference, the TSNL Forerunner conference, and my flight the day after the conference wasn't until like 4 in the afternoon, so I had time to go to the Alamo. A famous place. It's like a church building. Well, part of it is a church building, cathedral from back a couple hundred years ago. And it was pretty cool. And they have a gift shop, and I had these pressed out. I had 8 made for my nieces and nephews, and I was missing one. I couldn't find it. I had no idea what happened to it, and it was in my Bible. I somehow ended up in my Bible here. And so, hallelujah. It says victory or death. Interesting. So I owe this to my niece. Let me find the scripture again. God is good. I was able to get out there and walk on the river walk. That was amazing. And actually go out and witness to some people, pray for some people. That was powerful. That was good. But back to this scripture. Wrong chapter. He said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." And they cast lots, dividing up his garments among themselves. And the people stood by looking on. And even the rulers were sneering at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself if this is..." See, we just read that in Psalm 22. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if this is the Christ of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up to him, offering him sour wine, and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." Now there is an inscription above him, "This is the King of the Jews." Hallelujah. And let me just check the rest of the chapter here. See, it's not mentioned here in Luke, but right here where it says, and this is so bad. It was mentioned in Mark, I believe, because I just went through it. I mentioned it when I was going through Mark. Right here where it says, offering him sour wine. The soldiers came up mocking him, offering him sour wine. We read in another account of the gospel that Jesus was thirsty, and they took a sponge on a sword or something, on a stick or a sword or something, and put it to his mouth to have him drink it. And it was sour wine on it, which was supposed to disinfect the sponge or something, to clean the sponge. What I haven't done a deep research on this, but what I had seen was he got treated the worst. What I had seen was that's what the Roman soldiers used to like wipe their butts. And he said, "I'm thirsty," and they put that to his mouth. But here in Luke, it only says offering him sour wine. It doesn't go into the other details about it. Saying, "If you're the king of the Jews, save yourself." Which he could have. He could have. He said, "Don't think he could have called out for the Father to send legions of angels to rescue him. But he didn't. He did it for us. He stayed up on that cross for us. He didn't have to do it at all. He did it for us. For everything we've done wrong. For all our sins. And all he wants us to do is believe and trust in him and turn to him and ask him to forgive. Lord, forgive me. Like, I believe in you. I thank you for what you did for me. I believe in you. I want to follow you. Forgive me. I want to live for you. Help me live for you. That's what he wants. He did all that for us. Doesn't ask much in return. He made it easy for us, but most people still reject him. Just like they rejected him back then. He did all that and people still rejected him. One of the criminals who were hanged there was hurling abuse at him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other answered and rebuking him said, "Do you not even fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed are suffering justly. For we are receiving what we deserve for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." He knew. And I believe he was mocking him at first. Because there's another account that says that the ones hanging there with him were mocking him. But he repented. He turned from that. And said, and he was saying, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And he said to him, "Truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise." It was about the 6th hour, and darkness fell over the whole land until about the 9th hour, so it was about noon, and darkness fell over the whole land until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because the sun was obscured. This is also accounted for, I believe, in Chinese records. This is so interesting. There's Chinese records that the sun went dark on a specific day, I believe in 30 or 31 AD. And so it wasn't just an eclipse over Jerusalem. The sun went dark over the world when he was on the cross. And in the Chinese record, even says something like, what does it say? I wish I could look it up. Something like man or God died for man or something in the Chinese record. It was like they knew what happened. They knew what actually happened when the eclipse happened somehow, and it makes you wonder also about the 40 days after his resurrection. He was on earth for 40 days. He would just show up to the apostles like here and there. There's records of him showing up in Africa. There's accounts of him showing up in different places during that 40 days. And who knows where he went and who he witnessed to during that time. Hallelujah. Now it was about the 6th hour, and darkness fell over the whole land until the 9th hour, because the sun was obscured, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. And Jesus, and let me say something about that too. Let me pause again for a second. The veil of the temple was torn in two. Now this veil, this garment, this cloth, was like 6 inches thick or something. the veil between the holy place and the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant used to be was like 6 inches thick. And it ripped not from bottom to top, from top to bottom. And hallelujah. And that represents, the high priest would only be able to go into the most holy place, into the Holy of Holies, once a year to make atonement for himself and for the people. And what that signifies, the tearing of the veil, that signifies that we know that he is our high priest, and we no longer need a physical high priest to go before the throne of God. We now, through the blood of Jesus, can go before the throne of God directly to him. It's only through the Son that we can get to the Father, that we can get to the throne. And the Bible tells us to go boldly before the throne of God, making our requests, prayer requests. God hears. And even when it seems like God isn't listening, even when it seems like everything is going wrong and things aren't going to work out, that the enemy's going to destroy you, keep the faith. God hears. God knows what you're going through. And God is going to bring you out of it. God is using these things to strengthen you, to make you a stronger person. And the same thing happens with me, to make you a stronger person. And is going to use you mightily in the future. God molds us through different means, different struggles and troubles and trials and tribulations in our life. He uses different things to mold us, to form us into the person he wants us to be. Hallelujah. But it's not going to be hard forever. One more time from verse 44. Now it was about the 6th hour, and darkness fell over the whole land until the 9th hour. The whole time he was on the cross, I believe. Because the sun was obscured. And the veil of the temple was torn in two. And Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. And we also know that he said, it is finished. Right there at that same time. Which one he said first, I don't know. He probably said, it is finished. Father, into my hands, I don't know. He might have said it is finished last. It said he cried out with a loud voice, saying, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And the Son of God, God in the flesh, God the Son, died on that cross for us, for our sins. Having said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw all that had happened, he began praising God, saying, certainly this man was innocent. And one of the other accounts says, they said, certainly this man was a son of God. Now when the centurion saw what happened, he began praising God, saying, certainly this man was innocent. Certainly this was the Son of God. And all the crowds who had come together for this spectacle, when they observed what happened, began to return, beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances and the women who accompanied him from Galilee were standing at a distance seeing these things. And a man named Joseph, who was a member of the council, a good and righteous man, he had not consented to their plan and action, a man from Arimathea, a city of the Jews, who was waiting for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And when he took it down and wrapped it in a linen cloth, and he took it down and wrapped it in a linen cloth and laid him in a tomb cut into the rock, where no one had ever been lain. Now, Joseph of Arimathea was a rich man, and there's also a prophecy there that he would be, and actually Jesus, I believe, mentioned it in the Gospels, that he would be, what was it? I'm trying to remember the first part of it, but that he would, his grave would be with the rich, pretty much. It's in Isaiah. And he took it down and wrapped it in a linen cloth and laid it in a tomb cut into the rock where no one had ever lain. It was the preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. And now we know there was 3 days and 3 nights, and so this wasn't the seventh day Sabbath that it's referring to right here. I believe it was the Sabbath at the beginning, the first day of unleavened bread, which is the Sabbath day. Now it was the preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. Now the women who had come with him out of Galilee followed, and saw the tomb and how the body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and perfumes. And on the Sabbath day they rested according to the commandment. And now here, I'm just going to read the first line of chapter 24. But on the first day of the week, early at dawn, after the Sabbath, so that's after the weekly Sabbath. So from my understanding, I believe Jesus was crucified on a Wednesday. He was laid in the grave and spent Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday during the day in the grave. And then Saturday night was resurrected, and then Sunday morning, but on the first day of the week at early dawn, that's when they discovered the empty tomb, that Sunday morning, but he resurrected that Saturday night after the Sabbath. So I believe it was a Wednesday when he was crucified. And that's the end of chapter 23. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep the faith. We're going into 2024. This is going to be a big year for the kingdom of God. This is going to be a big year prophetically. There's a lot of stuff going on. I just saw that Israel had just attacked and killed 11 senior Iranian military officials in Syria. I believe at the airport there in Syria, which is pretty major. And, Iran is a major part of end-time Bible prophecy. I talked about this stuff all in so many videos, and I'm sure will again very soon. But right now in the Gospels, and that's the most important thing to know, that through Jesus, what he did for us, we can receive eternal life. We all sin and fall short of the glory of God. There's nothing we can do to earn a right standing with God, and that's why Jesus came 2,000 years ago, born as a human, faced temptation just like us. But he never sinned, never did anything wrong. And through his perfection, lived that perfect life that we can't live. That perfection is given to us. That punishment that we deserve is given to him. And just like he resurrected, we will be resurrected if we die. And even if we don't die, Jesus said, he who believes will live, even if he dies. And he who believes and lives will never die. I'm never going to die. Spiritually, anyway. Our soul is never going to die. But for some, there will be the lake of fire, which is the second death. Back to this coin. Victory or death. Which will you choose? Jesus already got the victory. You just got to choose him. Thank y'all for tuning in. Love y'all. Shalom.